secret sauce. One day, Zui went to his grandparents in the countryside. It was a long and tiring journey, and he was exhausted by the time he arrived. At lunchtime, his grandparents took him out to eat at a small food shop near their home. It was hot and dusty, but the food smelt great. They sat down and waited for the old woman to bring their food. The table soon started to fill up with dishes and plates of various kinds of traditional food. Each dish looked better than the last, until Zui could wait no longer. Living in Hanoi, Zui had started to really like tomato sauce, so he looked around the table to find some. There was brown sauce, chili sauce, soy sauce, and even mayonnaise, but no tomato sauce. He asked the old lady, but she shook her head. "Try this one, it's better," she said while cleaning the next table. Zui tried the sauce with his rice and it was amazing. He tried it with pork and chicken and even rice noodles. Each time was better than the last. He walked over to the old lady in the kitchen. "Excuse me, what is this sauce?" he asked politely. The old woman didn't answer. What is this sauce?" he asked again. The old woman looked up and said, "Secret." He returned to the table and sat down to finish his lunch. That evening he returned home to Hanoi. But he just could not get the taste of the secret sauce out of his mind. The next day, even though he was supposed to work, he returned to the countryside and went back to the old food shop. He again ate the food and put the special sauce on every mouthful. "Oh, wow, it's so good," he said while enjoying the sauce. He asked the old lady again, but she just shook her head and would not tell him the ingredients of the sauce. Zui is not a rich man, but he could not stop eating the secret sauce, and so even though he could not afford it, he went back every day. After 2 weeks, he was chatting with his old friend and telling him about the secret sauce. His friend didn't believe that anything could be as good as he said, and so he went with Zui to the countryside. The men arrived and ordered many dishes. They had roast duck and boiled chicken. They ordered fish and noodles and even fried potatoes. Each time the food came, they would cover it with the secret sauce, and it was incredible. Everything tasted amazing, astounding, extraordinary. After the meal, the men went to see the old lady. "I will give you $50 for the recipe to your secret sauce," he said confidently. The old woman just said, "Nope, I cannot sell it to you." The two men went back to Hanoi feeling frustrated. They had to know what it was that was in this sauce, but how could they find out? They returned each day of the week, but the old woman said the same thing. "I cannot sell you the recipe." The men started to get angry. They made a plan to steal the old woman's recipe for the sauce. "I know, we will wait outside and watch her make the sauce," said Zui. They tried, but she would not take the empty bottle into the kitchen and come back so quickly that they didn't have time to see anything. They offered her more money, but she still refused. They tried stealing a bottle of sauce, but by the time they got back to Hanoi, the sauce was sour. Months went by, and they were no closer to finding out what was in the secret sauce. Then, after talking to more of their friends, they collected money together for one final bid. They returned to the old woman's food shop and offered her $20,000 for the recipe. The old woman looked shocked and said, "Well, if you want it that much, I suppose I will have to sell it to you." The men smiled and laughed together as they waited for the old lady to return with the recipe. But instead of a recipe, she returned with a large, almost empty 20-litre jar. They gave her the money and carried the jar out to their car. There was no label on the jar, no words or writing. The only thing that was on the jar was the date, best before the 10th of the 2nd, 1969. They went back in and asked the old woman where the recipe was. She shrugged her shoulders and replied, "I have no idea. That jar was in here when I first opened 40 years ago. It smelt okay, and people liked it, so I used it." Zui and his friends went back to Hanoi and didn't tell anyone. How could they tell anyone that they lost $20,000 on an empty jar? It truly was a secret sauce now. The end. Thanks for listening. See you next time.